Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome back to another MRE podcast. My name's Stephen Fitzsimon, and I'm joined by Peter Hooymans.
G'day, Steve-O, and everybody.
So today we want to talk about something that irritates us a little bit, both Peter and I.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. And the way I termed it when I was chatting with the BDM and property management crew the other day was, are you a lazy property investor? And lazy is a bit of a hard word.
What's your definition of that then?
Well, it falls under a bunch of different categories, but I think
Can we just have the simple definition?
No, because I talk a lot.
Okay.
So I'll take an example. An owner has an investment property. He's come out of COVID on a low rent.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years since rents started rebounding.
Yeah.
He hasn't monitored remotely the rents.
Lots of the clients we talk to.
Heaps of them.
Yep.
And they're sitting there earning $130 a week less than market rent for their property, and they're not really even aware of it. Yet they might be at the same time cost focused. So they will be like concerned about the increasing in costs of owners' corporation fees in a property, for example, or these council rates are starting to hurt, or these compliance fees are starting to
So they just
stack up.
left everything on remote control.
Yeah.
And not.
And
that would be. I'm going to say that is going to be half the market.
And this is the challenge. So the component that the BDMs talk about is they speak to an owner and they go, "You're $130 a week off," and they're like, "Oh, am I?" And it's pretty. I say that it's lazy because you can do a search on realestate.com and see what your property is worth pretty quickly. They don't. That's it.
Yeah. So for context, though, we're talking about, we're talking about the scenario where people have got a portfolio and they're not extracting the most.
No, well, they're not even close. Like,
so that's your first definition of lazy. What else?
Yeah. Well, then it sort of goes to, okay, I've chosen an agent, and then it's set and forget. Because we have difficulty when we take over a management of a property, and the property's not compliant.
Yeah.
So all the new legislation's there. It's now a criminal offence to be signing some documents.
We spoke about that a while back, and that is going to be, I'm going to say 70%.
Oh, it's
more
for the ones that we've taken over.
Yes,
we're still yet to have one. We're still yet to take over a property that is compliant.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes.
So that's 40, 50 a month that we're doing.
But
and
not all of them are takeovers, but the ones that are takeovers, they're not compliant.
Yes.
I took over one last week, and it had failed its gas and electrical check.
So the 600 investment properties, 600,000 in Victoria.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? How many are compliant?
Well,
guess, just a rough, quick one.
I would say
a quarter, half.
Yeah, quarter.
Yeah.
And newer properties are a bit safer. But I went to a property yesterday that's owned by a developer, right? So we're talking about someone who's pretty savvy, knows their stuff, no question about having funds and so forth. I walked straight in and I went, "Oh, your property's not compliant."
What was the response?
Oh, why not? No, so no awareness of the legislation. And I said, "Oh, well, you don't have blockout blinds on the lounge room window."
Yep.
And they were like, "Oh," and I said, "Don't worry, I can fix that." And I got them a quote and it was approved and they're happy to move forward and all the rest of it. But the reality was they were going to lease that. And in fact, it's been leased during the period that it needed to be compliant in the condition that it's in.
But nothing happened because while the legislation requires that, there's no enforcement really.
Yeah, well, they're just starting on it now.
There's a dozen people to service hundreds of thousands, so it's going to be a slow enforcement process.
Absolutely. But like, so you look at that and you're like, okay, they're not aware of the fact that their property is not compliant. They haven't really bothered to check, but they're signing documents saying that it is compliant, right? And putting themselves at risk. So is that concerning? I say it is. We had a staff member take over a property 10 days ago, and it didn't have a condition report.
Yep.
So a condition report details the condition of the property when the tenant moves in, and it's used to compare the condition of the property when the tenant vacates. If you've got no starting condition report, you've got nothing to compare to. So that tenant could effectively trash the place and then be sitting there and going, okay, can I have my bond back? And as long as they've paid the rent up until the last day and left it reasonably clean, then you have to give them their bond back. So it's pretty devastating for that owner. Now they don't know what their condition report is. So you get example after example after example. Another one that we look at, owners don't know and don't review the way that their property is marketed. So we'll see a client, they'll call us and they'll go, Steve, I can't find a tenant. My agent can't find a tenant. And we'll look up their advert, and their advert is just horrible, using photos that were taken 15 years ago, showing that were taken on a digital camera from back in the day.
The same old story. It was 20 years ago when we decided we'd, go on the path of bringing some quality into the PM space.
Yeah.
Same old stuff's happening. So how do what's an owner do? Because they would assume that when they pick their agent, that those details are getting taken care of.
So that's it. So
because, maybe in the sales side, in the sales world, there's a higher level of professionalism because there's more money involved, or
perhaps
bigger ticket items, house now, everything's
it's their focus.
1 to 5 million. So 2%, that's, big bucks.
Yep.
Whereas in property management, it's smaller fees. Why is it?
Well,
I'm interested to know why.
Yeah, well, I think there is an expectation of service, but and they don't realize it until something goes wrong. But it's like everything. You pay your insurance and you're thankful that you've got it when something goes wrong. You still pay for your insurance, but with property management, these properties, they sort of tick along, and unless something jumps out and bites them, then there isn't so much of a evidence of the problem that's underlying everything. And then when that happens, okay, then they change their agent. But a lot of the time that might be tenancy after tenancy, year after year. And we're not talking small amounts of money. If you're $100 a week under market, there's $5,000 a year that you're missing out on. And when you're concerned about the fact that now you've got to spend $400 a year getting your compliance checks done for gas and electric safety checks, and you're missing out on $5,000, it's sort of it's
yeah.
it's
So, but this is happening every day, right? So
every day.
Like owners, we are pointing out to them areas they could improve, from saving to being more compliant to getting bigger rent, which is really is the main hot button in this market because we've got this huge undersupply of rentals.
Yeah,
and we're pointing that out to a lot of people, and they're not taking it on board. They don't want to.
It's a bit too hard.
They don't want to change. It's
a bit too hard.
That's sort of a bit. That's a bit weird to me.
Yeah, it's conflicting. It's like
So
you can make more money.
That's where we're frustrated with the lazy investors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go to all the trouble of working out the deposit, getting the finance, buying the property,
it's
choosing
negatively
property.
geared. They're spending money keeping it.
If it's off the plan, they've had to wait for it to be built. Then they're doing a tax every the 15th of June every year. The accountant says, I need all your receipts and your bulbs, things and costs. And so it's basically a fair bit of work, actually. Investment property is a bit of work, quite a bit of work.
A bit.
But they're not, a lot of them are not maximising their return, that's for sure.
And some are, so hats off to those ones. But the reality is, if you go on to realestate.com or Domain or whichever portal you prefer, I don't want to be skewed one way or the other. But if you go onto there and you type in, let's say you've got a 3-bedroom house in Glen Waverley, you type in 3-bedroom houses in Glen Waverley, you're going to see the other properties that are available in Glen Waverley at that time. Your property, you can compare it to those that are online, and you can find out roundabouts where your property should be in terms of market rental pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you're going to identify that you're $100 under rented. And I think that would take 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, or just call us and we'll help you with
Well,
it.
yeah, we'll do it obligation free.
Yeah.
But the
I'm just saying.
yeah,
Like, you know,
but this is it.
just get a good agent.
Yeah, get a good agent.
Yeah,
They're
out there.
Yes, and if you look at it and you say, okay, well, I want to have a look at I want to review my property. Again, you go on to Google, our good friend, and you Google the address of your investment property, and you'll see details about when it was last leased, the images that we used last time, whether or not it presents well. It's all available.
It's all online, man.
And how long does it take? 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So the frustration that I look at is that it's easy and fast for these investors to do a sort of health check, for want of a better word.
In 60 seconds or less. How do they do that?
Well, online. So they do that. And then the last thing that I'd suggest to them is to ask their agent 2 things. One, can I have a look at the condition report that was given to the tenant when they moved in? Right? That's a really good way of understanding the way that was presented to the tenant. And 2, the compliance reports. Yeah. Just check that you're actually compliant.
Oh, they wouldn't know. But I've been through so many opens recently, and the house is rented. I said to the agent, "Is compliant?" And you know it's not, because you can see the non-compliance right in front of you. So I'm not sure. I think some people don't actually know.
Well, but it's written on their reports.
Yeah.
But you got to read them. You get the bill. You got to pay the bill, but you got to read the report.
Yeah,
because we're seeing them come back all the time.
Right, so don't be lazy.
Don't be lazy.
Don't be lazy. Get online.
You can be better. It will put money in your pocket.
Or give Steve a call on
0431 759 699.
That's the one. All right. Thanks, mate.
Thanks for watching.